Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest releases as a part of the Big Chief Studios 1/6 scale character replica figure series. In today's review, rather excitingly, the third incarnation of the Doctor as portrayed by Jon Pertwee, with this rather exciting commemorative edition release. This is of course a 1/6 scale collector figure, complete with signature by Katy Manning, many accessories, and of course an especially tailored costume, alongside an authentic likeness to that of Jon Pertwee. This is an incredibly exciting release, and one of which that I've had now for quite a number of months. This review has been a long time coming, mainly because of university exams and general studies. It's prevented me editing this review and filming various segments, so I have had this figure for the best part of a year, so it's very exciting to finally be actually reviewing this product in detail. This will be a slightly longer product review to usual. I figure that because there is so much to talk about with this figure, plus the additional hands and accessories, there is a lot to talk about, so I'm going to take some time actually taking a look at the product, appreciating it, and talking about what I like and dislike. So apologies for those of you that do not like longer reviews. At the end of the day, I've bought a product, I really like it, and it's probably going to be the only time I'm ever going to be taking a look at this figure in this much microscopic detail, so I might as well do it justice. The packaging for the third Doctor 1/6 scale character replica figure is very similar in style to that of the packaging of the 8th Doctor, looking incredibly classic and incredibly stylish in design. At the top it states that this commemorative edition features the third Doctor, and then in the background we have this lovely sort of shadowy silhouette of the TARDIS exterior box, almost blended into the time vortex. Of course, the vortex itself has been inspired from the third Doctor opening intro, although it does also remind me, due to the colour scheme, of Scream of the Shalka. In the very centre of the vortex we get a lovely image of the third Doctor action figure head. And then at the very bottom we have the embossed version of the Doctor Who logo. This really stands out on the vortex background. I really do think that this logo works on quite a variety of merchandise. And at the bottom we have the newest version of the Big Chief logo, as well as stating that this is a commemorative collector's edition. As for the back of the box, this is absolutely stunning. We have a lovely image of the third Doctor figure wielding the sonic screwdriver, and in the background we have the TARDIS exterior box. The image gives a great look at the likeness to that of the third Doctor, as well as continuing the lovely Starfield and blue theme. The bottom of the box continues the embossed designs, including embossed versions of the BBC Big Chief and Doctor Who logos, as well as a little write-up about the third Doctor himself, his personality, and a little bit about his era. Flipping the box around to its side of the lid, we do have the stacked variation of the new series Doctor Who logo, the title of the product once again, finished off rather beautifully with this golden trim of Gallifreyan text running along the bottom. Once again, this has been embossed and looks excellent. The lid continues the darker blue background, as well as once again featuring the stacked variation of the Doctor Who logo. Finally, for the lid, at the very bottom we are greeted by lots of company information stating that this item is not suitable for younger Doctor Who fans, as well as detailing that this has a limited edition run of 500 worldwide, and this is number 316 of the commemorative edition run. One thing that I am still getting used to with this series is that the top of the box actually acts as a lid, almost like a shoebox. This reveals the inner contents box, which actually houses the figure itself. On one side we have the credits of the various talented people which have worked on this release, and on the opposite side we have the specifications stating all the components from the costume as well as the accessories that we will be taking a look at throughout this review. Lovely added detail is the Gallifreyan symbol for 3 seen at the top of the box, once again embossed. The tray layout for this figure is virtually exactly the same to the vast majority of Big Chief releases, so we have the main big tray for the figure itself, some accessories and the multiple hands, and then we have the smaller secondary tray for the base and the larger accessories, in this case the giant maggots from the Green Death. Now, of course, all Big Chief figures do come with a background, although due to them changing the style of box, it can no longer be the lid, which I must admit I do kind of miss, but we do instead have this separate piece of card which acts as a backdrop, the first of which is a lovely Starfield Gallifreyan design. This is decorated with lots of stars, some Gallifreyan text and the Doctor Who logo, as well as various images of the product which can be seen on the Big Chief official website. And flipping this around to the back, we have the actual backdrop for the figure, and that is the Third Doctor's TARDIS console room. Now sadly, unlike some of the previous releases, they have basically used a screen grab from one of the Third Doctor's stories, so as a result the image has been blown up onto this piece of card, and it does look rather pixelated and blurry, so it doesn't really look the best and doesn't look that premium either. Personally, I don't think it looks too bad. Apparently it was the best that they could source at the time, and it does work as an okay background for the figure when on display. Big Chief Third Doctor featured throughout this review is the Commemorative edition, so very much like the Big Chief First Doctor collector figure, Big Chief have supplied a rather lovely companion autograph, this time from Joe Grant as portrayed by Katy Manning. Sadly, of course, Jon Pertwee is no longer with us, so it's really lovely that Big Chief have still got a character that is linked to this incarnation in a rather special way to add to this set, certainly making it a lovely collector's item. So here we have the Big Chief Studios 1/6 scale collector figure of the Third Doctor out of the box in his costume from Doctor Who and the Sea Devils, and doesn't he look absolutely sublime? So here we have the Third Doctor with the cloak removed. I really do like this use of costume. I think there is a rather standard version of the Third Doctor as opposed to one of the more striking designs, the likes of, say, the green jacket from the Time Warrior or the vibrant red from the Time Monster. This is simply just a nice standard version of 3, and I think that it has been excellently put together with the various components. Starting off in the very centre of the Third Doctor's outfit, we have the Fawkes velvet fabric jacket. Now sadly, this is in fact probably one of the weaker elements to this costume, although it does still look pretty nice. I wouldn't exactly say that the Third Doctor's jacket is rather skin tight within the series itself, although it is considerably slim fit. There is certainly room for movement, a little bit of space. However, this jacket has a little bit too much space. I think this can in particular be seen around the arms here, where it kind of pads out, as well as on the upper torso and onto the shoulders. So I think another good example of this is turning the figure around to the back. Again, we have lots of excess material, so it doesn't necessarily fit to the body. We have the shoulders coming down ever so slightly lower than they probably should, although we do have some neat stitching lines down the middle. It certainly isn't the worst tailoring that I've seen on a Big Chief. Some of the previous ones that have been released many years ago were certainly more baggy. However, I think that this costume overall, the material is great. I love the way that we have the colour actually bouncing off the light here and lovely blue shimmer to it. I think that this looks really effective. Small detailing complement which also extends to the cloak, which we'll be taking a look at a little bit later on, is this little tassel design. Again, this is very similar to the cuffs of the jacket, but this is so intricate with this ribbon running around the side, and then we have the toggle in the very middle. This does in fact fasten and unfasten to reveal the shirt underneath. I'm not going to touch this because no doubt I'll unfasten it. I won't be able to get it fastened again, but again, for those of you who dare to do it, it is great to be able to access this feature. The smaller details also continue onto the side of the jacket, as well as on either side we do have the inclusion of 2 pockets. And a further pocket can also be seen on the upper half of the torso as well, just underneath the lapels. What this jacket really does get right is those intricate smaller details. I love the way we have this small detailing on the cuffs, which has been replicated using this rather small piece of string and then stitched into this great pattern. The cuff detailing can also be seen on the other arm as well, and when sat alongside the frills of the shirt and the Doctor's sonic screwdriver, it really does bring out the personality of the Third Doctor excellently. As with a lot of the Third Doctor's jackets, it is indeed very stylish, so you do have a black piping design which is present throughout the entirety of the lapels and down the side of the coat onto the back as well. So this is a really effective patterning. It is simply just a coloured ribbon, I do believe, which has been used. It does have a little bit of a shine to it as well. One thing that I will say the jacket has done rather well is the lapels. I think that these sit on the body really effectively, very naturally. I think that they're quite snug, they very much sit in place, unlike some of the previous lapels that we've seen on jackets with Doctors in the past. And again, this has been excellently emphasised by this lovely piping design running around the side. The Third Doctor is of course known for the frills on his shirt. I'm happy to report that the tailoring on the costume has done an incredible job of replicating those frills within the 1/6 scale. So starting off we have the cravat, and again this is excellent, and I'm glad that they've gone with a pre-tied tie compared to some of the ties that we've seen in the past, the likes of the First Doctor's cravat, which is going absolutely all over the place. I have tried, but it really ain't going into a bow. Which haunts me to this day. That's never been tied properly since I got it, and it really frustrates me. But yes, this is excellent. It's a really small material, actually, a lovely kind of ribbony-esque material, nicely tied. Of course, it runs down the centre here, excellently tied around the neck as well. I love the way the ribbon actually goes underneath the shirt collar, very much like how it would in real life. As for the shirt itself, just folding back the jacket ever so slightly, again, the collar is really precise. It's one of the more sharper collars. It's been nicely folded into place, unlike some of the previous shirt collars that we've had in the past. And then moving the cravat to the side there, we have these excellent frills underneath. Again, an excellent recreation for this scale, so we have a nice bit of excess material running down the side, and of course where the buttons would be in the very middle. And that is of course not all for the frills. With a little bit of tinkering with the material, you can push through the shirt, through the cuffs, underneath the jacket, and have them flaring out at the bottom around the Third Doctor's wrists. This really does complete the Third Doctor look and really make the figure stand out on the shelf. The definite highlight of this costume for me is that frilled shirt. I think in the very centre it really brings the piece to life, and again this is excellently complemented by the pre-stitched cravat, but I love the way this flares out at the bottom of the jacket as well. It really brings something to this outfit, and it does kind of distract as well from the slightly baggy nature of the jacket, which is a little bit of a shame. However, I don't think it looks too bad. So now moving further down the figure to take a look at the Third Doctor's trousers, I think it will be a fair statement to say that these aren't the most exciting trousers in the world. They're kind of just your regular male business trousers, really, business suit. So as a result, they've been made out of a rather nice matte black material, and of course the benefit of this is that this sits considerably naturally on the body. Overall stitching on Big Chief figures has really progressed leaps and bounds over the past few years. I think that the 13th Doctor and 3rd Doctor releases, and the 8th Doctor actually, the most recent as a part of the Doctor Who series, have really shown off some of the strengths of the stitching when it comes to Big Chief figures. I really do like the neat stitching here, running all the way down the entirety of the trouser leg. It's very neat, very precise, and looks very lifelike. One thing that I will say about Big Chief black trousers, and something of which that has been a pain in the arse of the likes of the 12th Doctor and 9th Doctors, is that these absolutely love attracting dust. So yes, if you collect these figures, get them in a glass cabinet, because you will be taking dust off them forever if you don't. Obviously, of course, in a glass cabinet, dust still does get in, but yeah, it's best to keep it to a minimum. Holding up the jacket ever so slightly to see some of those top details of the trousers, something of which that you really wouldn't see on first appearance, to be honest. We have the flies, which again have been really intricately stitched. Velcro has been used to keep these together, although some rather nice small scale Velcro, so it doesn't particularly look too bulky. And then we do also have some additional neat stitching around the sides, and even belt loops, which is great. He doesn't even have a belt. Turning around to the side briefly, again another excellent example of the intricate stitching and the various panels and material which has been used. We do have the side pockets. These aren't imitation pockets, and they do indeed work, meaning that you can put a few accessories into the 3rd Doctor's trousers. Just in case if you thought these trousers weren't detailed enough as it is, we do also have a few additional pockets on the back, along with a few complementary stitching lines, and even a few more belt loops. To take a look at the boots, we are indeed going to need to slide up the trousers ever so slightly. These are once again not plastic actually this time round, unlike the vast majority of Big Chief shoes and boots. This time we have a lovely materialistic kind of leather impression. I do believe the bottom is in fact a plasticky kind of design, but it's had a leather kind of, or pleather, applied over the top, and the same can be said for the rest of the boot in order to give it that rather flexible shape. Through using the material, it does of course create a rather natural creased effect overall on the boot, but it also means that we get some physical panels within the actual shoe, including coming around to the side here, but also tilting around to the back as well. We have this rather lovely back shoe support, and then we also have the sole, which has this time been sculpted in a plastic. This allows for a much more secure base to have the figure on, and very much like the 13th Doctor in fact, which was released alongside this collector figure, no wash has been applied to the sole to make it look worn and natural, which again, it would have been nice to see this included, but I'm not going to complain because that would just be very, very petty of me. Really impressive detail is this zip, which can be seen running up the side of the boot all the way to the very top. This can indeed be pulled up and down, so in theory you could take the boot off if you so wished. I'm not going to pull this zip at all because I've learnt the hard way with my Rose Tyler from the Big Chief series, where these zips sometimes don't last and sadly they can break over time. But that said, actually on inspection this does look very secure and no doubt will stand hopefully some use. So in summary, for the Third Doctor's outfit, I think this is excellent. I think all the components really do come together to create something striking and special. I think the jacket is an excellent darker blue with some really lovely intricate details, and this is complemented superbly by those very neatly stitched together trousers, some of the more snug fit trousers that we've in fact seen as a part of the Big Chief series to date. With the exception of the upcoming 6th Doctor release, I imagine the 3rd Doctor is probably one of the most complex outfits the Big Chief have created to date, because we have the base of the jacket and the cravat and the frilled shirt, and then over the top we have this excellent cloak, of course also taken from Doctor Who and the Sea Devils. Excellently sits on top of the body with some superb smaller details including clasps, and of course that very striking red lining on the inside. The cloak itself is littered with so many smaller details, really bringing it to life. On either side of the cloak we do have the inclusion of 2 pockets. This has been really neatly stitched together, and what I absolutely love is tilting up the pocket lid ever so slightly. We even have the red lining on the insert. Now as you can see, this does in fact look like a pocket, but it is indeed imitation. It only goes down ever so slightly, so you can't put accessories within this, or at least not fully. The material which has been used for the cloak is lovely. This is a really light material, ensuring that it sits on the body quite naturally, although no wires have been included on this central section, unlike the likes of, say, the 10th Doctor's trench coat, meaning it does take quite a while to pose this and actually make it look natural. It can be a little bit of a faff on at times, but you will get there eventually. One of the advantages of this really light material is on the cape. I think this excellently sits on top of the 3rd Doctor's shoulders and drips down the arms incredibly. Of course, just peeling it back here, we have the exposure of this lovely red lining, which does of course shimmer in the light like a satin. This has been really neatly stitched together. No matter what pose you put the 3rd Doctor in, the cape will follow the alignment of the arms, which is really beautiful. Once again, due to this being black, it does tend to attract a little bit of dust and fibres, so I do recommend keeping it in a glass cabinet. But again, due to the fact that it doesn't have wires within it, it does float down the 3rd Doctor's body in a rather natural way. But I also love that no matter what pose you have the 3rd Doctor in, there's always that ever so slight hint of the red lining underneath. Also, naturally, just turning this back ever so slightly, we have that beautiful red lining on the inside, which instantly is incredibly striking. Again, we also have this black trim running down the side, looking lovely and very impressive, and it just looks dazzling. It's a really beautiful costume. There's not too much going on the back of the cloak, however, when the arms are spread, you really do get that impression of how big this outfit component is. There are a few stitching lines running down the centre of the cloak, in particular on the spine and here. I suppose one of the main benefits of not having the wire is actually no matter how you pose the cloak, there is a little bit of natural creasing running down the sides as opposed to it being fixed in one position. If you are a fan of figure photography, I think that this release is very much for you, because no matter what pose you put the 3rd Doctor in, you're always going to get an interesting and striking silhouette. Despite the rather large size of the cloak, I'm actually quite surprised to see that this doesn't really bulk out the 3rd Doctor's shoulders too much, especially given that already quite big Fawkes jacket underneath, which rather makes the shoulders look very bulky indeed. But this is excellently finished off here with this lovely trim around the sides. It's been stitched in a way that rather neatly holds down this lovely shoulder section, and we have a lovely material finish, making it stand out compared to the rest of the cloak. The removal of the 3rd Doctor's cloak is relatively simple. All you need to do is very much like any other long jacket really on a 1/6 scale figure. Move the arms back and then gradually slide the cloak down it, and then it shall come off eventually. Times like this that I really wish that I had a TARDIS hat stand that I can put all of these on so they're all safe, but also still on display. So now, of course, moving on to arguably the most important part of this figure, and technically the most important part of this review, it is of course that likeness to that of Jon Pertwee himself. Now, of course, the big chiefs do always attract criticism, but also quite a lot of positive comments as well over the strength in their likenesses to various actors. And I think in the case of this figure, they've definitely got Jon Pertwee's personality spot on. I think that the likeness also is absolutely brilliant. I think that they are generally very good at capturing older male faces, because technically the more creases and wrinkles there are on a face, probably the easier it is to replicate. So on this figure we have so much intricate detail which really elevates the sculpt and brings out so many aspects of the face to really capture Jon Pertwee's likeness when he was in the role as the Doctor. Turning him to an angle ever so slightly, as I think that generally when you look at these likenesses, sometimes they're not as effective when looking directly down the barrel of the camera. It can be quite creepy. There's definitely that essence of the Third Doctor in there. I love the way that we have that glazed effect on the eyes as per usual, that lovely glossy, almost damp finish. Again, the detailing of the iris and the various different colours around the sides, including that very light pink to make it look almost flesh-like, but equally the pigment around the rest of the face as well. There is so many different shades which have been used to replicate that of Jon Pertwee's complexion, and this has been excellently emphasised by the various creases and wrinkles surrounding the face. Brilliant wrinkles above the eyebrows as well, going to the top of the forehead, which for the most part has of course been covered by that massive shock of grey hair on the top of his head. Equally, of course, we also have some details towards the lower half of the head, that superb kind of stubble effect around the sides of the mouth. Again, not too much, not too little, definitely captured that perfectly, with also of course that intricate paint application around the lips. Stuff like the eyebrows, as well as that ever so slight shading under the eye, are really nicely done. Very subtle, very natural looking. I'm generally really impressed with this. I'm also very happy to see that we also have detailing on the neck, moving up the head there ever so slightly. It is brilliant that we even have details of wrinkles running down the front of the neck as well as to the side. I'm very happy to also see that the head and the neck are indeed one of the same sculpt. They aren't split, so we don't have that ugly neck join, something of which that quite a lot of the newer big chiefs are starting to use, which is definitely a positive compared to some of the earlier releases. Turning around to the side of the face, ears with the usual detailing that you would come to expect, and then of course we have the hair, which again is all one sculpt. Various different shades of grey have been used, really nicely drawing attention to detail to those various strands and curls. So many different curls on this head, of course, because the Third Doctor's hair is generally really impressive. As we tilt around to the back, again we have a rather thick wash which has been used, creating a lot of depth. So many various different strands of hair excellently brought to life, and even as we move back around to the front here we have further strands, but this time a more intricate design, as we have the individual curls coming down over the face. So in summary, for this head sculpt, I really do love it. I think they've definitely captured the likeness to that of Jon Pertwee, but also the personality in there as well. They've somehow managed to capture that twinkle in his eye, very much like how he has throughout the vast majority of the episodes from the 70s. So yes, I'm really impressed with this, but as always with the big chief figures, I do also like to consider and bear in mind that of course certain angles will look a little bit unusual, because having a figure of this scale with so much detail will look odd at various angles, such as looking directly down the camera. So you do definitely need to get the positioning right to really capture that personality and likeness. And one final thing to note about this 1/6 scale collector figure is of course articulation. I'm not going to be going through absolutely every single joint, as we will be here all day. However, what I will say is it is of course the usual Big Chief 1/6 scale animatronics body with over 30 points of articulation, so it is highly posable, lots of different poses, as hopefully I've presented throughout this review. And of course it is also nice to see that this is one of the stiffer bodies this time round, as opposed to some of the older releases in the series that were rather floppy at certain joints, which was rather difficult to pose. This one is incredibly sturdy. Combination of incredible tailoring, varied accessories and a dramatic pose will make this figure probably one of the most eye-catching things on your collector's shelf. So now we've taken a look at the Third Doctor, let's move on to the hands and accessories. I'm really happy with the variety that this figure comes with. We've got lots of different things from lots of different stories, as well as many different poseable hands. The first accessory that we'll be taking a look at is the Third Doctor's trusty sonic screwdriver. Now this is an absolutely excellent sculpt. It is of course ever so slightly bigger to that of say the Character Options 5.5 sonic screwdriver accessory, so as a result it features lots of great smaller details. All the panels have been sculpted excellently and the paint application over the top is equally just as impressive. So we have this lovely shiny silver effect which has been used to really make the piece look like metal, and then of course at the very bottom we have this various black collared design, and then we also have a few more intricate lines there coming up to the midsection, which due to this being the Third Doctor sonic screwdriver does of course also feature the rather iconic black and yellow banding, and then at the very top we also have the emitter as well. Now this is my personal favourite part of this accessory because the actual top piece is a cylindrical bit of plastic, even complete with these little sections there in the very middle holding the bullet piece in place. We do also have a bit of black there around the back as well, with of course a silver piece at the tip. This is a great accessory. And of course a classic sonic screwdriver completes any action pose perfectly. Very much like the recent 13th Doctor release, I think the Third Doctor is in a very similar boat where it is quite difficult to pose this figure in a way that doesn't look good. I think there's so many poses and so many accessories, it looks great. So we've had a rather expected accessory with the sonic screwdriver. Now let's have something rather obscure. It is Bessie's remote control. Again, the sculpting on this is lovely and some great paint application has been included to really make the buttons stand out, including some yellows, blues and oranges to really highlight those smaller details. At the very top we also have what looks like almost a steering wheel highlighted with a black paint application. We even have a little aerial on the side, and then flipping around to the back we don't really have too much to talk about. It is just a silver. And now the Third Doctor is equipped and ready to call Bessie. Although sadly for this Third Doctor he's going to be waiting a while, because sadly a 1/6 scale Bessie, I'm probably going to need to take out an entire mortgage to afford one of those in the 1/6 scale. For those of you that collect the Big Chief figures quite regularly, you may find this next accessory a little bit familiar. We have the Third Doctor's magnifying glass. Now this is a direct reuse of the magnifying glass which was released alongside the 8th Doctor, but this time we have some paint application changes. We have a lovely light brown which has been used on the handle, and then we have the actual magnifying glass template here which has been given a silver paint application, and very much like the initial release which came with the 8th Doctor, the magnifying glass does indeed actually work, which is excellent for the scale. Really do like the way that this set of accessories really represent the variety within the Third Doctor era, and the next accessory is a brilliant example of that. We have the Metebelis 3 crystal from the Third Doctor's last season. Now there isn't really too much to this. It is of course very angular. It's been made by rather beautiful transparent lighter blue plastic. We have a lovely point there at either end and looks very much like the jewels as seen within the story. Of course, the Sea Devil ray gun. Now the Sea Devils always have a special place in my heart because they're one thing that kind of connects my viewing experience of Doctor Who to my dad's, because he can remember the Sea Devils and watching the Sea Devils as a kid. So this is a great little accessory which represents one of the most iconic episodes within the Third Doctor era. I really need to get around to rewatching it again at some point. Really lovely accessory, a really excellent sculpt. Of course you have the main blaster there at the very front. It's been given a lovely silver paint application. We also have the black design around the side as well as at the very centre, which has been given a lovely crisp paint application. And then as we turn around to the back we have the handle, which again this can be held by the Third Doctor there with this rather thick pillar section in the very middle, and this has been given a darker green paint application, something of which that I previously wasn't aware of. I feel like the next accessory is kind of a blend between James Bond and absolute sci-fi. We have a gorilla gun apparently. I do believe that these are from the Day of the Daleks. I personally can't recall it from the actual story, but that said I watched that episode quite a number of years ago. So we have a rather regular looking gun there at the very bottom of the little holster, which of course the Doctor himself can hold in his hand, and then at the very top we have all of this sci-fi gubbins going on. We have these little sort of what look like tiny little rockets there at the very top with this lovely yellow highlight, and then we have this little pistol section at the very end, and of course the top of the gun has been painted a rather sharp and vibrant silver, whilst the bottom is of course just your regular gun, which is a lovely sort of sculpted standard black plastic. Once positioned correctly, the gun can fit rather snugly into the figure's hand. Especially given that the gun accessory isn't the first thing that I think of to come packaged with the Third Doctor, it is a really good piece to display in some very dramatic action poses. One of the smaller accessories that comes with the Doctor is of course his TARDIS key. Now a few of these have been released over the years. Of course you have this small metal chain there, so nothing really too much to talk about. It can go in the third Doctor's pocket. And then at the very end we have the TARDIS key itself. So this is of course the third Doctor one, so you may just be able to tell there that it is that lovely classic design with all those triangles and angles on. This is in fact printed on both sides. There is that little dotted design on there. It is incredibly impressive for the scale. Of course will look excellent with the third Doctor entering his TARDIS if you have a classic series TARDIS for your shelf. I know there is a few kits online that you can purchase, so yeah, this is really cool. Final accessory now from the smaller range of accessories. We have another clothing item, and it is the third Doctor's watch. Again, this is really impressive for the scale. The watch strap is a black plastic. We have a few holes in there as well, very much like how a usual watch strap would have. Even the buckle has been given a rather sharp silver highlight, and then on the very front we have the watch face. This is one of the more extravagant watches that we've seen released as part of the series. I know that the 11th Doctor has a rather regular one, so we have a little clock face there, which has been given a lovely bubbled effect, making the top look like glass, having a rather transparent piece of plastic there added over the top with multiple faces. To apply the watch to the figure, you will first need to remove one of the hands and then slide the watch over the wrist piece. Admittedly, it is a very small detail, and in the vast majority of photos you're going to take of this figure, the watch is likely not to really be on view. However, it is still a great attention to detail to see it included. Once again, it's little details like this which set the Big Chief figures apart from all of the other Doctor Who merchandise available. So now moving on to the two ever so slightly larger accessories, we have the giant maggots from the Green Death, one of my personal favourite third Doctor stories. These are excellent and of course a great display piece to go alongside the figure. I do believe that these were incentives, so basically if you purchased the figure at full recommended retail you got both of the maggots, and then if you got the deposit or the payment plan I do believe you got one of them. Either way, these are now available I believe via the Big Chief Kit Bash corner separately, so you can pick them up if you weren't able to first time round. So looking at Maggot 1, I must admit, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable holding this. It is a very weird sculpt, isn't it? It is just a standard, regular, straight maggot, so there's not really too much to it. So we have a few lumps there in the very middle of this rather gruesome looking end hole section thing. And then we have the end, which doesn't really have too much to talk about, just comes to a point. Darker colour, but nothing really too much to stand out. There is a few ripples in there as well, to give the impression of the material, or I do believe the bubble wrap, which was kind of bound together throughout the story in order to create the maggot appearance, which is very cool. Then we have the second one, which is a bit more interesting. I must admit, it is one, as you can see, when placed down, it's kind of raised up to attack. So we have the ferret skull, in fact, clawed open there, of course, with the mouth and the little pincers in the very middle. So it does look a bit more visually exciting. It has been sculpted in a really effective manner, although again, sadly, there's no wash which has been applied over the top of this. Here we are, just for fun. Here is this side-by-side comparison with the Big Chief Giant Maggot alongside the character options variation within the same pose. It is quite interesting to see the way that the different companies have represented the maggots, as visually they are quite different, although the sculpt remains quite similar. To be honest, despite the scale difference, in this case it does actually work, as the character options maggots can almost be the less developed versions that obviously grow throughout the duration of the story. I think it really is a shame that the Big Chief variations don't have this lovely toxic green finish, as I think that this actually really sets the character options ones apart from the Big Chief versions. At the surface here, just to make it look like the maggot has been running through the toxic Green Death waste as seen throughout the story, because other than that it is pretty bland, but cool nevertheless. It's that time of the Big Chief review to take a rather unusual amount of time to look at some tiny hands. Yay, something of which that never happens in any other product review on this channel. Of course the third Doctor is a rather dynamic Doctor when he comes to his poses, so very much like the 12th Doctor we do have lots of rather different poses within the hands this time round. So starting off with this one on the side, we have a rather flat palm position, but not just any flat palm, we have what I believe is a Venusian Aikido kind of flat palm. Don't want to get on the wrong side of this incarnation of the Doctor, especially with those specifically sculpted karate chop hands. do have lots of different creases within the palm there. Each individual finger has a little bit of sculpting detail, and then flipping around to the opposite side as well. Lots of excellent bone structure within the sculpt, but also due to Jon Pertwee being a slightly older gentleman, we also have a few creases and wrinkles within the skin as well, giving that impression of aging, alongside a ring which has been sculpted onto the end finger there, which has been given a lovely silver highlight, which naturally is present on a number of hands in this pile of hands. Next up we have one of the more iconic Third Doctor hands, if there was such a thing as an iconic Third Doctor hand. We have the rather Peter Capaldi-esque pose. I think especially if you have the 12th Doctor Big Chief, these two will look excellent together. Rest are of course positions for accessories, so we have a sonic screwdriver holding hand, a slightly larger accessory holding hand. What is rather unique for this version is we do also have two gloved hands, which really do make for an excellent display option. It's simply something a little bit different, and it looks excellent. Material effect, along with a few wrinkles and things within it, and what I really like is on the outside we even have a little bit of stitching detailing running around each finger, and then we also have a few further wrinkles there on the inner palm of the hand itself, and the same can be said for the other gloved hand as well. Really, yes, the beauty of Big Chief hands is that there's a lot of them, and you can do lots of things with them. But overall, for the accessories, I really am happy with them. Some excellent detail across all of them. I really do love the inclusion of the maggots as well. It's just a shame about the paint application, and hopefully throughout this review you've been able to see some of the accessories in use. There's lots of different varieties of poses and stuff that you can use them for, which is really cool indeed. As with all Big Chief figures, the Third Doctor does also come packaged with a display base. As always, this is the normal style, sculpted in a dark blue plastic. At the top we do have the crotch cradle. Of course the Third Doctor is one of the taller Doctors who have been within the show, so as a result you may need to adjust this in order to display the figure more securely. The centre of the display does of course feature the usual reflective design, although sadly this does collect dust a little bit, which is a bit frustrating. The base features a few company details, as well as the battery compartment and a few stubs ensuring that it doesn't move when on display. Flipping around to the back and switching on the switch, this reveals Gallifreyan text stating that this is the Third Doctor, which again is consistent to all the previous classic Doctors released as a part of the Big Chief Collector series. Should be noted, when in broad daylight and not complete darkness, the Gallifreyan text doesn't particularly stand out too much. It kind of just glows ever so slightly, so it's not the most powerful of lights, but it's still cool nevertheless. So in summary, for the Third Doctor 1/6 scale replica figure, this is another brilliant addition to the collection. In particular for this release, I am really impressed by the tailoring on the costume, because this is probably one of the most complex outfits that Big Chief have replicated to date, and yet all the components fit together in a really polished manner. The only thing that I would have liked to see improvement on is the Fawkes jacket. It is incredibly baggy and sadly doesn't fit to the figure too well, but thankfully, in this figure's benefit, we do have that giant lovely cloak covering the jacket itself, which kind of prevents it being seen, which I think definitely does this figure favours. The tailoring on the jacket overall isn't necessarily bad, I just think it could have been tightened up ever so slightly. As for the likeness to Jon Pertwee, I love it, and equally the accessories are incredibly strong as well. Lots of variety, some well-known stuff, some more obscure stuff, which is brilliant, and I love that about the Big Chief series. But very much like how I'm going to mention, or have mentioned, depending on how you've watched these reviews within my 13th Doctor Big Chief review, there are things at Big Chief that I would like to see rectified in the future, such as just tightening up the figures, such as the various components within the outfit, generally polishing up those small errors to make these figures perfect. Because yes, there are a few flaws here and there, but especially given how long these stay within the production process, I kind of expect the figure to be flawless upon its arrival. And that is one of the other criticisms that I've got, simply how long it has taken for this figure to actually get to the collector's hands. Yes, there has been various delays over the past few years which can't be helped, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, but this figure was in fact on order before COVID happened, and even then there was delays. This figure has been a long time coming, and I really do hope that Big Chief will be able to slightly reduce that production time in the future, because sadly it's just simply too long between releases. releases, especially given that there is already so many other different figures on pre-order already. It's almost impossible to continue to pre-order this series and keep faith within the line in producing figures when it's simply taking so long between the various different releases. Little things like this I really hope are polished up in the future, but otherwise this is a superb product, and if you have the money, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a Third Doctor fan. So there we have it. That is the Third Doctor 1/6 scale character replica figure from Big Chief Studios. I really hope you have enjoyed this rather long review. Of course, it has been quite in detail, taking a look at the various components of this release, but I do hope you have enjoyed it, and who knows, maybe even this has convinced some of you to purchase this rather expensive addition to your Doctor Who collection. This really is a brilliant figure. I am very, very happy that I purchased it. I feel very lucky to have it as a part of my collection, and it looks excellent alongside my other Big Chief figures, and long may it continue. I'm really looking forward to hopefully adding more classic incarnations in the future. Of course, most notably, the 4th Doctor from season 18 and the 6th Doctor as portrayed by Colin Baker, which of course if you've watched this channel for quite a while, you will know I'm very excited for that figure indeed. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content. Have a nice day. I shall see you all next time.